Greetings, Kindred. I am Voivode Maquette, and welcome back to our World of Darkness, where today we're going to have a clan discussion. Sort of. And I know it's been a while since I've said clan discussion. And I have a hard time putting S at the end of clans with what we're going to be discussing today, because we're going to be handling the anti-tribute, the anti-clan. And I do understand that in all the other editions of Vampire the Masquerade, we've seen different versions of what the anti-tribute actually are and who they actually are. And in V5, we've got a whole new monster. We've got a whole new monster to deal with. But I'm not going to be looking at the Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition Sabbat as if they were supposed to be antagonists. And I'm not going to be looking at them as if they were supposed to be NPCs only. Today we're going to be doing a Vampire the Masquerade theory on what if these were player characters. Because so many people want to play Sabbat. I've probably done more Camarilla games than Sabbat games. I've done my damn share of playing and storytelling for Sabbat, and I've always had a great time doing it, because sometimes you want to play the monster. That's just it. Sometimes you just want to play the monster. And I have a whole idea on how to do this. I do want to point out that this video is actually inspired by a comment that was put out there by Josh Walsh, one of our community members, who said, "I'm thinking there might be no clans for the Sabbat, but it will be paths. Instead of clans, paths will take more importance determining what kind of vampire you are in the new V5. And I just think that whole concept is really cool. And I was kind of like bouncing around with kind of the same idea in my head, but I was completely off from that, because my original thought process of what the Sabbat would be like in V5 was that if the Lasombra and Tzimisce left, and I've got theories on that too, but if the Lasombra and Tzimisce left the Sabbat, I saw one of two groups taking over. I saw either the Venture Anti-Tribute popping up, basically getting rid of the majority of the spirituality of the Sabbat and turning it more into like a militaristic terrorist organization, or I saw the Panders standing up and taking hold of everything. But with the way that this whole thing is going, the Lasombra abandoned the Sabbat. Not only did the Lasombra abandon the Sabbat, they turned around, they kicked it in the nuts, they spit it on the back of its neck, destroyed the Sabbat. When I say that, I mean, not only did 50% of the Sabbat, chosen by the Amice Noctis, turn around and say, we quit, they're killing top members of the Sabbat to prove their loyalty to the Ivory Tower. That's fucked up. But it's also completely within the lines of the Darwinist viewpoints of Clan Lasombra, and I cannot be against that. Now, the new way of looking at the Clan Tzimisce is making a lot of sense for them leaving, because they hoard things. And what if the Sabbat was their hoard for the majority of the plot line? For the past 500 years, they've been hoarding the Sabbat themselves, but the Lasombra have left. They need to describe to themselves what their hoard actually means when such a huge, major part of it left. Now, or they could very well be just going, no, we're here to fuck with the Lasombra. After all these years, after 500 years of letting the Lasombra be in charge while they take the spiritual backseat, where they do all the priestly work, they provide the Khaldunism rituals and all that into the Sabbat. Maybe after the Lasombra left, they just went, these aren't worth it. These aren't adversaries that are worth it. Another thought is, with how proud Lasombra and Tzimisce tend to be of their clans, maybe this whole new outlook of we don't have clans, this anti-tribu, we are solid in what we are without the need to go by the names of our antediluvian founders. Maybe the Tzimisce just went, we're not giving up our names. We're Tzimisce. That is the kind of petty shit I can see the Tzimisce getting into. Because that's who they are. They are the dragons. They are the Tzimisce. And they're not going to give up their identity like the other clans are going to want them to do. But I'm getting off topic here. The idea that instead of there being the select group of, or the select groups of clans, of separating everything between the Brujah, the Toreador, the Ventrue, and all that junk, instead of that, what if when you're brought into the Sabbat, they tear down your identity to separate you from your clan? Not specifically who you are personally, but they try to remove aspects of what your clan is. And I can't get over how cool that is, especially considering the fact that we have the Paths of Enlightenment. Because the Paths of Enlightenment are the only thing strong enough, not two-dimensional, the only thing strong enough that can actually replace that identity that you get from clanhood. Because even in the Sabbat, the Brujah always cling together, the Toreador always joined together, the Ventrue always joined together, because they had that need to bond with each other. Blood calls to blood, you could say. Now, with the idea that the Paths of Enlightenment would be taking over that, there are so many Paths of Enlightenment, but today we're only going to look at the actual Sabbat accepted Paths of Enlightenment. There are two within the Sabbat that are fairly common, which are not accepted by the Sabbat. We will cover them a little bit later, because I do feel that they do make up such a huge chunk of the Sabbat. They're so important. There's always going to be those little heretical groups. So, if you're brought into the Sabbat, shovel-partied, you might not never know what your clan is. Most of you are going to end up being, most of the new Sabbat are going to end up being panders. But it doesn't matter, because they don't judge based on what your clan is. With the founders of the Path of Night and the founders of the Path of Metamorphosis leaving, it doesn't mean they've left. That doesn't mean the path is gone. So there's going to be those individuals also. So if you are a vampire in 5th edition and you're coming into the Sabbat, how do you build your character sheet on that point? Well, it's one more step on top of your standard character creation, and that would be choosing your Path of Enlightenment. Your Path of Enlightenment is going to be another step like Predator type when it comes to those things. In fact, your Path of Enlightenment might dictate your Predator type. I can see Bloodleech being a very prominent role in Path of Cain, due to the fact that they can become addicted to Kindred Vitae. Now, going through the paths, I actually I'm using this as my reference. I think you guys should check this out. I'm definitely going to leave the I'm going to put a link in. Check this place out. It is I'm going to butcher this name. Get ready for that. Salagia Wikia. I don't know. Anyway, it's a wiki. It's a fan wiki that covers all of the Paths of Enlightenment very well. You guys should check this stuff out. I will leave the direct link to where I am right now, but it has all of the Paths of Enlightenment on here, and I'm focusing primarily on the Sabbat path. So if anybody wants to see anything that has to do with more of the other paths outside the Sabbat, or if you want me to dig deeper into these paths, I could do clan discussions as path discussions if you guys wanted to go deeper into these. But I do want to cover this part, because When you build a Vampire the Masquerade character in 5th edition, you take 2 disciplines that belong to your clan and 1 that belongs to your predator type. But what I'm suggesting here is we add 1 more step onto that, where you take 1 that belongs to your parent clan, 1 that belongs to your predator type, and 1 that belongs to your path of enlightenment. The idea that your path is going to dictate how your character is going to become that vampire, that you're rewriting the whole concept of what your clan is. And these disciplines, your path of enlightenment disciplines, are going to be beaten into your head by your pack so damn hard, because the pack unit is going to be the source of all of everything. The pack unit is your coterie at that point, and it's going to help you understand exactly how your path works, not your clan. So looking at the paths that we have listed here on this page, skipping all the paths that don't actually belong in the Sabbat, we do have Path of Cain, Path of Cathari, Path of Feral Heart, Path of Honorable Accord, Metamorphosis, Night, Power in the Inner Voice. And the 2 paths that I say are part of the Sabbat but aren't supposed to be part of the Sabbat are Path of Lilith and Path of Evil Revelations. Path of Lilith is your path dedicated to the Bahari. The Bahari are already playable characters inside Cult of the Blood Gods. So check out the Bahari information on there. There's an amazing Bahari lore sheet. It's all really, really cool. In fact, I think that each of these paths should have their own lore sheet to help you be closer entwined into your pack. Maybe create a pack, maybe create path lore sheets that have 5 different positions within the path, different stations you could be, like level 1 could be Acolyte or something like that, and then work your way up to being Ashen Priest. That way everybody is like an Ashen Priest of the Path of Cain or something like that, so that you're more capable of like performing sermons of Cain that are dedicated to your specific path of enlightenment and things like that. In fact, I think I'm going to have to homebrew a whole bunch of fucking lore sheets on these paths now that I'm thinking about it. But those are the paths that need to be looked into things. Now, Path of Evil Revelations is your Infernalist path, not your Bali path. There's a massive difference between a Bali and an Infernalist, and I'm pretty sure we will cover that at some point in time. But I want to focus, I want to center, not lose myself in going off topic. But the idea that these paths are your clans. So looking at it straight out, let's hop right into the first clan. And again, if anybody wants me to go deeper on this and describe how I think these paths would work as the Sabbat clans, let me know, because this is something that I'm insanely passionate about, is the Sabbat and the way that they should be run with their paths. So the first one we got is Path of Cain. And Path of Cain, they're the Naudists. The Naudists are all faith, they're all righteousness, they're all research in Cain. Their ethics are to search for the history of Cain, learn from his actions, develop your willpower and predatory instincts. The beast, like the rest of the vampiric form, may be mastered. Take the vitae of the unworthy, so that you may become closer to Cain. Temper this acrow with an understanding of your own potential, so that you do not take the curse for granted. Adapt to the needs of your new condition. Cast aside your lost humanity. Study your abilities and the abilities of Cain to discover what belongs within you. Examine the limits and meanings of vampirism. And it goes on to talk about history and current practices and everything, and it's all very well written out. But as a clan, what discipline would Path of Cain suggest. And I would actually go with Auspex for Path of Cain, because it's all about higher understanding. It's all about higher learning. And using levels of Auspex while committing the ritual of Diablerie is something that needs to be considered, because that self-improvement is something that you can just take. You're not just looking at, oh, I Diablerize this guy, I get all this XP to dump into my character sheet for his disciplines and abilities. You are getting something more out of it. And I actually do think that you should get something more out of it. Maybe not more XP, but more of a focused practice on learning the lore of Cain through the consuming of the Vitae. This path is going to be one of the most spiritual leaders of the Sabbat now. Moving right along, we got Path of Cathari. Now, the Path of Cathari followers are called the Albigensians, and they are all about hedonism and revelry and getting what you want from unlife itself. Their ethics are indulge in vice, wealth, sensuality. Material power are hallmarks of the physical world. Lead others to temptation. It is your role to promote the depravity of the world. Grant the curse of Cain to those with great passion. Undeath is an evil curse, but those with great conviction can use it well. The entire material world and its denizens are corrupt. Expect betrayal and wickedness. Your rule as a creature of evil is predestined. Accept it and fulfill your purpose. Death simply leads to reincarnation. Mortals return after you kill them. However, you should avoid final death, since you will return as a mortal after you die. Those are pretty freaking cool. And the idea of choosing your tenets based on these things, finding ways to do yes and no, ultimate yes and ultimate no. I will always, I will no, I will never. Always indulge in vice. Never fully trust someone. Like, those are all very neat ways of putting it. Never feel bad about what you're doing, because it's all about fulfillment of yourself. Presence is definitely a discipline that I would say on this one. Auspex also is something that I think would do with this, because being able to have heightened senses in throes of passion and hedonistic pleasure is just, that's hallmark for Path of Cathari. This Gnostic path of accepting the fact that everyone is wicked, that everyone is evil, and we just need to throw ourselves into it and live as a hedonist, it's a very fun path to take. And this really holds true for the Toreador Anti-Tribute. But now that we're casting off the idea of clans all the way around, we're dealing with something very, very cool here when it comes to being able to play this deeper. Path of the Feral Heart. Once considered Gangrel Anti-Tribute Purview, the Path of the Feral Heart has such amazing cast-off human roles. And I think in this world, that's my dog Nord, I think in this world that we're living in nowadays, where people are coming to identify themselves as what they feel inside more than anything else, the Path of the Feral Heart is something that can bring you freedom on a therapeutic level. And what I mean that is, taking a look at the ethics, survival is your first concern. Politics or technology simply get in the way of the hunt. Learn to strike a balance with your beast. Engage in the brutal actions necessary to survive, but retain your intelligence and cunning. The natural world is an illusion. All things must live according to their forms, and even civilization is natural because it is the form of humanity. Although fire can kill you, you must master your fear so that you can kill those who would use it against you. And whether running alone or with a pack, your loyalties must be absolute. You have no time for shifting allegiances. That right there is so Sabbat right there. If you're a member of a pack, you need to have pure loyalty. And this one definitely, right here, I can think of 3 disciplines that work out well with Path of Feral Heart. Fortitude, definitely, is something that is going to encourage you to have survival. But Protean is an amazing discipline that holds true on this one. Animalism could come into direct need for this, for hunting purposes. But I could see that being set on the wayside between either Protean or Fortitude, definitely. And since there's no clan boundaries of who can have what, depending on what your founding clan's discipline is, or what your predator type discipline is, you could very well start learning vicissitude outside of things. There's just so many ways about this, and now that you've cast off what your clan boundaries are, you can learn so much more specifically for that. Path of Honorable Accord. This one was very heavy in the Ventru world. Knights. The nickname is the Knights. I'm sorry. Path of Feral Heart is the Beasts, but Honorable Accord is the Knights. And they always keep your word and honor your agreements. Never show cowardice. Overcome your fears. Duty comes before personal matters. Treat your equals and betters fairly and equitably. The dishonorable are beneath your contempt. Always repay your debts and support your comrades at arms in all things, except where they counsel treachery. That would just be such a fun thing to run a pack in. And that's something that you guys do need to consider, is that if you are playing Sabbat, you will most likely need to have everybody on the same path if you're in a pack. And that's not so hard for me, because there's so many different things that you can do when it comes to amalgams, when it comes to disciplines. Like I said with Feral Heart, you could have some people with Fortitude, you could have some people with Protean, you could have some people who have it specialized into vicissitude. But when you're looking at Path of Honorable Accord with the Knights, you need to, this is a little bit more of a thinker when you're trying to figure out what disciplines would actually come with this code of chivalry, because they don't deal in a lot of the same issues as vampires. This could very well be a Path of Enlightenment that just says choose one that you feel works for you. Let's see what current practices. The followers of Honorable Accord have always placed a high value in ritual and ceremony. Presence. You know what? I would go ahead and say presence would be something that they could take here. And the reason is because ritual and ceremony is regalia and being noticed outside. In fact, you can probably look at a lot of these on what clan they were originally used for and go, the Ventru were very big in Honorable Accord, so presence is probably going to be a big thing here. Skipping into Path of Power and the Inner Voice, which is another Ventru-esque Path of Enlightenment. Their ethics are: do not tolerate failure, including your own. Punish it visibly and harshly. Be sporadic in your words. Drive your followers to excel, but never let them assume that reward follows excellence. Strive to control by any means. Dominate the world around you and bend it to your will. Use the most effective tool for any undertaking. Hate, fear, anger, the key among these tools, but feign benevolence. Show respect to those in authority, but replace them when they falter. Deal from the position of power. do not show weakness. Path of Power of the Inner Voice is obvious. You're either going to take Potence or you're going to take Dominate. Those are the two disciplines that most make out this thing. And I'm so looking forward to actually stopping and writing out the idea of the anti-tribu clans. And clans in quotations here, because anybody can have these. And the idea is that you're not being taken into... On the outside world, yes, they're being driven into a cult. On the overarching of everything, you are looking at vampires who have been completely roped in, brainwashed, and taken into this cult. On the inside, you guys are joining guilds. You guys are joining spiritualities and religions. And you have to understand that from a Camarilla or Anarch perspective. You have raging, bloodthirsty monsters with no self-worth. They are pointless and void of personality, other than they're there to fucking kill you. And each of these paths are going to show you how they're going to kill you. Path of Cain is gonna fucking eat you. Path of Power in the Inner Voice is gonna beat you into submission. Path of Cathari is going to lead you into hedonism and self-destruction. And it's so cool that they have that outlook. But when you're on the inside, these are how you're going to survive. This is how the world is going to survive, and this is how the antediluvians are not going to take over. Because you're separating yourself from the weakness that is humanity and raising yourself up to the next level of vampiric evolution. Vampiric evolution, Path of Metamorphosis. So when we look at Path of Metamorphosis, this is our Tzimisce. Our Tzimisce path. The funny thing is, I've played several Tzimisce. I love Clan Tzimisce. Everybody can tell. I've never played a Tzimisce on Path of Metamorphosis. My character that I played for a while who was on Path of Metamorphosis was a gangrel. I was using Protean to make myself my best me. I was forcing myself into frenzy all the time and having it take me in the direction that it was going to take me. So, the nickname of the Metamorphosists are the Metamorphosists. And when you look at their ethics, learn the characteristics of all stages of life and death. One should not concern themselves. I just said thy, I don't know why. One should not concern oneself overtly with mortals. They are step below kindred, not above them. Do not share knowledge with others, as it is too valuable to trust to flawed creatures. Indulge the beast and deny it. True comprehension of unlife requires a broad range of experience. One should alter and augment one's body. Changing the flesh may pave the way towards changing the soul. Do not heed the need or desire of others, and their lack of introspection may distract even the keenest intellect. This path breathes Tzimisce. This path breathed Tzimisce, obviously, but it doesn't stop other clans from following it. I would definitely say that the followers of this path would have access to Dominate and Protean. And if they took the two together, the idea of taking vicissitude to augment themselves, to constantly find a new way of practice, of evolution. This path is just fun to have around. And when you're not considering the fact that, oh, it's Tzimisce path, because the Tzimisce aren't there anymore. There are Tzimisce in the Sabbat, but they don't acknowledge it anymore, and that's a fun thing. There are La Sombra in the Sabbat, but they don't acknowledge it anymore. Imagine a Path of Metamorphosis La Sombra. Let's just go ahead and say that they were... Let's do a minor character build right now, just for fun, just for shits and giggles. Okay. So let's just go ahead and say that we have a Scene Queen La Sombra on Path of Metamorphosis, shall we? So as a new character, I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm going to take the first level of Oblivion because it's part of my parent clan. As a Scene Queen, the reason I'm taking Scene Queen is because I'm going to familiarize myself with a certain subculture. Let's just go ahead and say that I have a cult of metamorphosis. And I believe that it says that I do gain contacts, advantages, and things like that. I'm going to go ahead and take Dominate as my Scene Queen power. So I've got Dominate and Oblivion. So on that, I'm going to take Protean. So I now have Dominate, Oblivion, and Protean. I'm going to go ahead and specialize my Protean into a Vicissitude with my Dominate. Therefore, I now have Oblivion, and I have Vicissitude. I am now what we used to call in the old games a Shadow Weaver, and those are fucking terrifying. Vicissitude should never match with Obtenebration, but guess what? It fucking does here. And that's why the Sabbat can be freaking terrifying. Now, we are talking about La Sombra, so let's go ahead and hop over to Path of Night. Path of Night, the Nihilists. So, Clan Nihilist. Could you imagine if individuals who practice these paths, that the nicknames of these paths was their new clan? The Beasts, the Nihilists, the Metamorphosis. That sounds like shit you'd hear in the Sabbat. What clan are you? Clan Nihilist. Like, that is something that you could take into account. Now, the Nihilists are something that people often, at least in my experience as an ST, do wrong. And that's because they don't understand what the Nihilists actually are, because it really is a misnomer when you hear the concept of Nihilists. The Nihilists, or the followers of the Path of Metamorphosis, have a very dark take on Catholic practices. And this is a path that could be taken into such a beautiful way of playing. And some people could find this offensive if you're a Catholic or not, but this is what happens when people take things the wrong way. Or when you take a Dark Age mentality and bring it into the modern nights. It doesn't fit quite right. But the ethics are, leave no being untouched by your taint. Ew. Get your mind out of the gutter. Tempt and horrify those around you. The weak will fall, while the strong will be tempted by your testing of them. They're trying to make people... They're weeding out the weak. This is a Darwinist path. In fact, I remember for a little while, Path of Night, the nickname were the Darwinists. Inspire others to accept their inner darkness. Experience every sensation imaginable, and then some. Death is a means, not an end. Kindred, as souls damned by God, fulfill their purpose by preying upon mortals. The Nihilists believe themselves cursed by God as angels. They don't believe that they are there to cause horrible things in the world. They actually believe that they're there to cause humans to be weeded out. They're sending the wicked to hell, but they're raising the good above. One of the huge major tenets of this path has always been never kill an innocent, because you're trying to tempt them. This is very much like Path of Typhon when it comes to the ministry, because you're not there to cause darkness and destruction. You're there to weed out the weak so that the light may shine. And definitely this is something where you're going to want to either take Presence or Oblivion. But that is something that's very, very fun. And then I think we're actually missing one path on here before we get into the other ones. It's actually not on this page. It's really sad. Anyway, the one path that's missing from this page that I know of is Path of Death and the Soul, which is the study of death and the soul. It's the idea of where Path of Bone is the study of the physical processes of the body after it dies. The Path of Death and Soul is the spiritual thought process of what happens to the soul after it dies. So you would be more interested in the idea of wraiths than you would be in the idea of zombies, things like that. I do not have their ethics on here, but a lot of it has to deal with the idea of being able to. It's a very scholarly path that. In fact, I can't let this go. Hold on. No, sorry. Path of Death and the Soul was not on that page for some reason, so I did hop right into the wiki to find it. I just wanted to go over the ethics real quick. It's study the transitions of life and death. Only by classifying the irrational can one truly be rational. Do not fear death, for the soul is immortal. By understanding the rational mind, one can glimpse the irrationality of the soul. Attempt to understand as much as possible. Explore your emotions, but never indulge in them. Accept that everything follows a pattern, even if you do not understand these patterns. These are all... This is obviously an Auspex or Oblivion necromancy side Oblivion, compared to the others. And they're all paths that would just be so much fun to play off as these are your clans. And there's so many options of things that you can do with paths like these. And again, I think each of these paths should have their own lore sheet, which I'm going to start homebrewing because that's just too much fun. Now, we do have two more paths, and these are the heretical paths of the Sabbat. These are the paths where if you are on path of Lilith, you tell people you are on path of Cathari. You never tell anybody otherwise. In the path of Lilith, they are the Bahari or the Lilins. And they practice the ethics of only through pain are we elevated. Be a teacher, a torturer, and lover to any who seek enlightenment. Practice what you learn. Wisdom is meaningless unless it accompanies action. Cultivate a garden that you may show the power of your own creation. Seek out those on the border of awareness and initiate them. Gather with your brothers and sisters and share your learning and anguish. The path of Lilith is very... I always associated it with the Toreador Anti-Tribute, but truthfully, any clan can really just give themselves into it. I love the Bahari very, very much. It fits very closely into my own personal way of life, where you have to learn from your pain. I don't go out of my way to cause myself pain, but you have to learn from your pain and accept it and move on from it. And I respect anybody who has a high respect and veneration towards women. So the Bahari are just a beautiful path. I think the only Bahari I have ever played was a Toreador Anti-Tribute, who was just... he was fun. He was a fun character. But I can also see the fact that there's a good chance that most Bahari aren't going to be in the Sabbat anymore. They seem to be becoming more accepted on the outside, and the only reason they were really ever part of the Sabbat is because they couldn't fulfill their practices in polite Cainite society anywhere else. I mean, even before we got the Sabbat back, in our initial books, we had Bahari. I think the Bahari is in the core book, isn't it? It's like one of the first lore sheets. Yeah, even it's in the core book of Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition. We have the rules for playing a Bahari. We have a lore sheet for a Bahari, and it's a little bit different from what I'm thinking path lore sheets should be, because I personally think that it should cover basically first starting and then becoming like an Ashen Priest or something like that. But the Bahari lore sheet actually gives you more on the idea of rituals that they practice. But going into the other heretical path is Path of Evil Revelations, the Corruptors. And these are not people that are happily engaged with the Sabbat. The Sabbat hunt these fuckers down big time. And let's see. You are a servant of the greater evil. Serve your masters well, and your position will be elevated. You must convince other vampires of the righteousness of your cause. Use duplicity and prey upon their weakness whenever possible. Fight against vampires who would strive for some semblance of honor and goodness. They are misguided. Never reveal your true motives. Others cannot work against you if they do not know the end to which you work. It is acceptable to engage in intrigues with the servants of other demons, but your loyalty to your lord and to his other retainers must be absolute. Use the beast as a tool to spread your evil. Again, Path of Evil Revelations, it's not... I really want to point this out. This is not a Bali path. The Bali do not serve demons. They control demons. There's a huge difference. Infernalists serve demons. And they're a cancerous growth on the Sabbat that needs to be trimmed. And this is what the Sabbat Inquisition is all about. But that being said, if you did want to play a character on Path of Evil Revelations, Presence would be a good thing to take. Obfuscate would be a good thing to think. You might even want to consider blood sorcery, truthfully. But again, this is something that needs to be looked into in greater detail. This is not a path that typically would be accepted, but it is also a path that you can see that some Sabbat might actually fall into, because being a member of the Sword of Cain means walking along the razor edge of that sword. There is the balancing act of holding on to who you are without falling into infernalism or fanaticism, because you can get lost in the Sabbat completely and become those monsters that the world of darkness is trying to say that they are. Or you could fall into, but this is an easier path to power. And I'll tell you one right now, man, infernalism was not fun. I've played an infernalist before, and don't fuck up those rituals. But this is what I mean, though, is we have the idea that clan could very well be replaced by path. And on that idea, we do have 11 paths that could very well make up the clans of the Sabbat. Who they are, what they fight for, and why they fight for it. This gives you an idea of who you could actually be. Most of these paths would be so much fun to play in a game where you're taking over lost territory that the Sabbat lost. I would love to play in a game where I'm playing follower of one of these paths who decides that this pack is going to take over Mexico City and kick out Fiorenza Savannah. Right now, we are going to take over and kick that Camarilla Ventru bitch out of our territory. But then on the other hand, playing a Bahari, playing in a pack of Bahari who are trying to survive in a standard Sabbat area, who are trying to not be noticed, where you're hiding from the other monsters. It could be a lot of fun. Brings on Masquerade to a whole new level. And then there's Path of Power in the Inner Voice, and how much fun does it be to try to drag as many Sabbat down to hell as possible in the service of your demon overlords. But if we were going to get a book on paths for player characters, that is what I would expect it to be. I would expect it to be choose a parent clan if you want to, and choose all that. The only thing that really needs to be held on to that is humanity. After that, what happens to your humanity level? I think humanity should be gotten rid of and replaced with morality, because it's a little bit different, and not that different. Not that different. If we're looking at it, if we look at humanity of 10, humans with this score are rare. And the vampires who have achieved it, even more so. At this level, mortals and kindred alike lead a saintly, veritably ascetic life, tightly controlled by ethics and principles. See, at that point, a morality of 10 means that you are obsessive over your path. Now, here where it says your benefits, blush of life is not necessary because you're... At this point, you're looking at more of like, you're automatically a couple traits up when talking about your path with other people and things like that. So the idea of the benefits for the humanity can change when it comes to morality. I would love to see a Path of Enlightenment book that basically states morality instead of humanity. You have the same 10 points as you did, but they do different things. You get different benefits. Like, looking at it, Humanity 1 says, you suffer an 8 dice penalty on rolls to interact with humans as above. The penalty becomes 5 dice with blush of life, but who cares? Not you. That right there is the benefits that you get for Humanity of 1 in this system. And it basically states that you have a hard time with even the concept of pretending to be human. At that point, you're basically on a path there anyway. So maybe that should stay exactly as it is. I mean, looking at these right here, it basically is just like what your penalty is with dealing with humans. And as a path, as a Sabbat, it doesn't really matter for the most part. But I do think the idea of, let us homebrew what morality would be. A 10-point just like a humanity, 10 points with the benefits and like a small amount of description. But that doesn't overarchingly tell you how your character is going to react. It tells you what they suffer from. Which is why I like this system so much more than the other ones. Because it has this gritty vagueness about it that focuses on what your tenets are over what your humanity is. Because humanity doesn't necessarily mean that you're part of... Humanity doesn't necessarily mean you're a good person. It means that you are closely connected to who you were. So morality is going to be more of how closely connected you are to vampiric existence, not human existence. These are just ideas. This is just my thought. And this is what it felt like it fit into clan discussions because Anti-Tribu is the new clan for the Sabbat. I'm excited to see where this is going to go. In August, we're not going to get anything like this. We're going to get a book on antagonists. But it's going to give us at least an outward view of what the Sabbat is to the rest of the World of Darkness, where we can use it to hone in what our thoughts would be as player characters playing members of the Sword of Cain. I might have to do a playtest on what I've just been talking about here today. And if anybody has any thoughts on what disciplines would go with certain paths or anything like that, let me know. If anybody wants me to do a full video specifically on each path, let me know. I might do that anyway, but I am interested in your thoughts on whether or not that should be a thing, because I've just enjoyed brainstorming on this one. I don't have a script or anything in front of me that's telling me exactly what I need to talk about here. I'm more along the lines going on where the passion of the topic brings me. And Sabbat is just so close to my little black heart. So I am Voivode Maquette. This has been Our World of Darkness, and we are discussing the anti-tribute and what exactly it means to have a path over a clan. Good evening.